So financial close is the point at which the project becomes real. Finance is fully committed and available to be drawn. It is a very significant stage, and all the issues we've been discussing at the financing stage, from getting your project agreements, getting your EPC, having credit enhancements, they all gravitate and end the financial close stage. So the key thing is the fact that finance is fully committed. And at this point, the lenders have no other obligation than to provide the necessary funding for the project. Availability to be drawn does not mean that you can just go ahead and write a check. There are still some steps where that might be needed. Bankability moves from theory to actual. Before, we've been talking about bankability from a planning perspective. We've been saying we are structuring, but now at financial close, you're actually putting your money where your mouth is. Construction can now begin. It's a critical point for all project parties in the project life cycle. The sponsor can justify his development efforts to say, oh, I've been on this project for 5 years, and finally, we have financial close. The lenders have signed, we have our agreement signed, and we're just waiting for disbursements to begin construction. The EPC contractors are also happy that they can now receive payments to be made through the project vehicle, and construction can commence. The advisors who have some success-based fees, like your lawyers, your financial advisors, everybody's happy to come and eat out of the cake, right? And government can do a groundbreaking, shovel the ground, evidencing that the project is real and justifies effort in supporting the program. Now, I'm not talking about the groundbreaking series, the closing period, which is also called the financing stage, and there's the construction period, which is post-financing. So let's look at the key activities in the closing period, because that is really where the work is. So number one, we want to achieve bankability. So as you get to the closing period in your project should get more bankable. So you want to formalize all risk allocation, contract negotiations, and as I mentioned, development feedback. The second thing you want to do is financial signing. You sign a term sheet with your banks, which is different from your loan agreement anyway. But that term sheet may require a number of CPs, which are considered conditions precedent, which is all the other agreements you have claimed to have signed, all the negotiations you've done. You have to bring documentary evidence to back all this up. Then your CPs and your security and your completion of all the conditions precedents. Then your contracts are activated. Then your due diligence is actually finalized in itself. After financial signing, after CPs are met, then we have the financial. And the financial close leads to us to be able to draw down financial facilities, and money is available to start the construction. So these are the key real activities, right? 1 to 5 looks like, oh, okay, after all, you can be on this 1 to 5 for about 4 years. You can be at 2 at some point, go to 3, you're now providing CPs, you are almost at 3, you're going to 4, you're going back again to 3 to get some documents or to get some things sorted out. Then you're going back again to 2, you're looking at the term sheet again and things like that. So these key activities are very much required at closing. So what's happening in the finalization or formalization of risk? We all are very familiar with this image here. You have lenders, equity support, sponsor equity, and government providing concession. So this diagram is called a transaction grid, and it doesn't have to be the same way every time. It can be in different forms. Then you have the offtake agreement here. Then you have the key project contract with the EPC, O&M, and leases. So when we mean finalization and formalization of risk allocation during the financing phase or closing period, what we are saying is the project moves from conversion of term sheets into the full loan agreement, securing the final credit approval. At the sponsor equity level, what we are doing at the closing period it involves the conversion of the developer agreements into proper shareholder agreement and sponsor agreement. We ought to have concluded that before getting to financial close. Concession, conversion of the tender award into final agreement and securing formal government support or treasury support. Regarding the offtake agreement, conversion of tender award into a power purchase agreement and securing connections and agreements. And finally, securing all permits and licenses, including license. For this, conversion of term sheet into EPC and O&M. So most of these key projects start with term sheet for EPC, term sheet for O&M, term sheet for lenders, term sheets even or developer agreement or heads of agreement agreed for the equity sponsors. Then let's go to the 3 things that happen post-construction. Now that the project has been constructed, how do we get into operations? Number 1 is we need to do testing and commissioning, which I'm sure you're all aware. You need to test and ensure that the facilities meet the required volume and specification you had given the EPC. You need to also manage disputes, because there will be a lot of disputes happening during the process. And these disputes, you want to ensure that it does not get to a point of default. Remember when we were talking about the direct agreements? You always want to try and cure the situation so that it does not escalate to the lenders, and the lenders are now trying to step in. And finally, the major concern of lenders during operation is for you to run the assets at an optimal volume and value, making sure that the asset is getting the required level of volume to meet the required level of cash flow available for debt service, so that the project can actually meet its debt service obligations. So this is just a very high level overview of really what happens within that kind of process.